He's a virgin loser who always got rejected by his crush like all of us, so he decided to take action and unlocked his hidden ability to defeat his rival as a mafia boss. The story begins with a boy named Nova trying to catch some smugglers at the pier when suddenly one of the smugglers throws a bomb and tries to escape. Hearing this explosion, another boy named Liberta joins the fight as well and lends Nova a hand. They both easily parry the smugglers' attacks, but while they are busy fighting, a well-dressed man comes in a car with the sickest drift in the history of anime and drives away with the smugglers' bosses. Nova tries to chase after them, but Liberta suggests that they use the back streets to their advantage to catch up to them. During this time, their fellow mafia members Debito, Pace, and Felicita also find out about the smugglers as their car approaches them. But Liberta suddenly jumps on the car from the top of a building and holds onto it like a cockroach, while the smugglers point guns at him. Things look bad for the poor guy, but then Debito comes in front of the car and shoots in such a way which makes the driver panic and the smugglers fall out. The driver balances the car but is met with Dante in front of him, who blows the car up with a freaking rocket launcher just after Liberta and the driver jump off and Liberta lands in Pace's arms. Then, the driver tries to run away but is stopped by Luca, who is holding a knife, so he changes his direction towards Felicita, but Nova slices him shirtless and makes him give up. After the fight, Liberta tells Debito that his actions are too bold, but he simply jokes away saying that he is indeed bald while rubbing his shiny forehead. After that, they all return to their home, and from some locals, we find out that these fighters belong to a vigilante organization known as the Arcana Famiglia, and they protect the Regalo Island with their powers. Back at the mansion, Luca walks in and is immediately surprised to see that Princess Felicita isn't wearing a dress for her father's party, which catches him completely off guard. He stares for a moment and raises an eyebrow while saying she used to be much more obedient than this. After that, the maids nearby giggle and chime in, blaming him for her rebellious streak and teasing him that it's all his fault since he was the one who had been by her side and serving as her attendant since she was a child. Then Luca sighs with a feeling of a mix of guilt and confusion, but before he can say anything else, Felicita calls out to him and reminds him that they're running late. Without waiting, she starts walking, and Luca hurries to catch up as the two of them head together to the party. When they arrive at the Grand Hall, all eyes turn toward Felicita, and whispers immediately spread across the room. People begin to murmur and ask why the princess isn't wearing a gown. The atmosphere gets a bit tense, but before it gets worse, Nova steps forward and calmly says it's actually better this way, pointing out that they're surrounded by men, and wearing a dress wouldn't be the safest option. His words surprise Felicita, and as she turns to look at him suddenly, she sees a vivid image in her mind in which she is wearing a beauty which makes her cheeks burn with shyness. Just as she tries to brush it off, Liberta bursts into the room with his usual loud energy and immediately demands to know why the princess isn't wearing a dress. At that moment, another vision flashes before Felicita's eyes, and this time, it's her again in a dress, but seen from behind, and it's clear that Liberta is the one picturing it. Her face goes red again, but this time with frustration, and without thinking twice, she swiftly kicks Liberta straight in the nuts. Then he doubles over in pain, groaning and asking what the heck he did to deserve that, but before she even answers, Jolly walks in with his usual mysterious calmness and says that it's because Liberta was thinking dirty thoughts. Then, Jolly begins to explain the real reason behind everything. He reminds them all about the pact they've made with the Tarako that gave them their Arcana powers. Then he looks toward Liberta and says he carries the first card, the Fool. Then he nods toward Nova and adds that he holds the 13th card, Death. Turning to Felicita, he tells her she bears the 6th card, the Lovers, which gives her the power to see into other people's hearts, which explains the strange visions she's been having. As he's talking, he slowly moves closer to her, and he leans in, clearly going in for a kiss. Suddenly, Luca reacts instantly and steps in to stop him protectively. It all happens so fast, and then he turns and glares at Liberta angrily, accusing him of imagining the Arcana process in completely inappropriate ways. But before he can say much more, Felicita turns to him with narrowed eyes and without hesitation, gives him the same punishment with a swift kick in the nuts, and leaving Luca doubled over right next to Liberta. Then comes Mondo, who is the father of Felicita and is called Papa by the public as well because he is the head of the Arcana Famiglia. He gives a speech on how he is celebrating his 59th birthday today, and at this age he is thinking of retiring. Then he announces that he is hosting a tournament named the Arcana Duelo in 2 months, and the winner of this competition will take his seat, and also be given the title of Papa along with a wish and the hand of his daughter named Felicita, like a Dragon Ball World Martial Arts Tournament announcement. After that, he also states that everybody with Arcana powers has to participate. Meanwhile, Felicita tells him that she doesn't want to get married to Witch. He reminds her that she chose to join the Arcana Famiglia with her own free will, but now has to follow his orders. Then he challenges her to defeat him if she wants to go against her will, but when she attacks, he blocks her every attack and throws her to the ground. Suddenly, Liberta tries to attack Mondo as well, but is stopped by Nova. Then they rush towards each other, but Nova gets tackled by Invisible Debito, who has the 9th card, Hermit, and can turn invisible. Meanwhile, Pace holds Liberta down, thanks to the 11th card, which is Strength, and it grants him immense strength, yet Liberta breaks free because his powers activate due to his angry emotion. After that, Mondo tells him that if he wants to free his daughter, he has to win the Arcana Duelo and use his wish likewise. While walking back to his room, Mondo informs his wife, otherwise known as Mama, about the turning of the Wheel of Fortune, which goes against Tarako's guidance. Later in the day, somewhere in the mansion's courtyard, Debito and Pace are sitting together talking casually. Suddenly, their light-hearted conversation gradually drifts into something more serious and slightly cheeky as they start talking about the princess. With playful grins and teasing tones, they joke about what it would feel like if Felicita became their bride. Then, Luca overhears their conversation from nearby and his mood changes completely as he becomes angry. Meanwhile, in another place inside the mansion, we find Dante and Jolly standing across from each other, speaking in a much calmer, more serious tone. They too are discussing Felicita, though their focus is on the upcoming tournament and the competition that could decide her future. Then Jolly confidently says in his steady voice that he fully intends to win. Later that night, Felicita sits alone by the fountain in the garden under the quiet sky as she looks thoughtful and a little weighed down by everything such as her future, the tournament, and the pressure of everyone's expectations. Suddenly, Liberta appears from the shadows, approaching her with a serious look as he walks up slowly and stops beside her, and he tells her not to worry. Moreover, he also assures her that he's going to win the tournament, and when he does, he will use his wish not for himself, but for her freedom, because he wants her to live the life she chooses and not one chosen for her. After that, Nova arrives and walks up as he interrupts and reminds Liberta sharply that he still doesn't have full control over his Arcana powers. But Liberta doesn't back down and replies that it doesn't matter because he's made his decision. Then he says he will alive and fight by his sword, whether his power is under control or not. After that, Liberta looks back at Nova and throws the same argument in his face, saying that Nova has also never even used his own power, so who is he to talk? Then, Nova makes a meaningful promise to Felicita in his usual reserved way that if he wins the tournament, he will use his wish to ensure that she doesn't become his wife. The next morning, Felicita leaves her house to live with the rest of the gang, along with Luca, who is motivating her and telling her that she has the power of the 14th card, Temperance, by her side. When they reach the mansion, they are welcomed by everyone and are surprised that Nova also came to welcome them. Then, they introduce themselves to her, with Liberta telling her that he is in the intelligence series whose leader is Dante. Then, Dante confirms and adds that he is also the director of the Arcana Famiglia, along with the fact that he has made the deal with the 4th card, which is the Emperor, like Doctor Strange, revealing he's the Sorcerer Supreme. After that, Debito introduces himself as the leader of the Coin series, after which Pace introduces himself as the leader of the club. Lastly, Nova introduces himself as a member of the Holy Trial, which is responsible for defense, like Avengers declaring their role. Soon, Dante assigns Felicita to the Sword series and makes her fight a duel, which she wins after she asks who the leader of the Sword series is. After the fight, Mama, who holds the 20th card known as the Judgment, crowns Felicita as the leader of the Sword. While sleeping, she remembers a dream from the day before when Mondo announced the tournament and its prize. The next day, Liberta walks into Felicita's room, and the two start chatting casually. Their conversation is light and playful, but soon they notice Nova rushing down the hallway. Liberta becomes surprised and raises an eyebrow because he has never seen Nova in such a hurry before. Then he quickly grabs Felicita's hand, and they follow him down the corridor with curiosity. Soon, they find Nova kneeling and searching under a bed, clearly flustered. When they ask what he's doing, he tries to brush them off and avoid answering. But at that moment, Felicita's Arcana power activates unintentionally, and she sees a white kitten in Nova's heart. Then Nova feels embarrassed and slightly annoyed while scolding her for looking into his heart again without permission. He then explains that he had saved a small white kitten from being hit by a carriage earlier, and he brought it back to the mansion to care for it, but it got excited and ran off while now it's lost somewhere in the house. Hearing this, Felicita and Liberta decide to help him find it. Together, they begin searching all over the mansion. Eventually, Liberta spots the kitten in one of the hallways and tries to catch it, but it slips past him and takes off again. In the process, Liberta accidentally knocks over a vase and ends up getting scolded by the maids for the mess. Meanwhile, Nova tracks the kitten to the library, where he finds it perched on top of a high shelf. Then he climbs up to reach it, but the shelf wobbles and suddenly topples over, sending both Nova and the books tumbling to the floor. This is how the kitten escapes once again, slipping through an open window. Moments later, Felicita spots the kitten outside, now sitting calmly on top of a tree. She gets ready to climb up and retrieve it, but Luca appears just in time and stops her, insisting it's too dangerous for her to climb. Then he quickly climbs the tree himself, but just as he reaches for the kitten, it leaps past him, dashes by Nova and Liberta again, and finally lands straight into Felicita's waiting arms. Then the three of them sit down, a little out of breath but relieved. As they try to decide what to do with the kitten, Felicita notices a small ribbon tied around its neck. She gently holds it up and tells the others that it must belong to someone and that this kitten has a home. She smells the cat like Sherlock sniffing a suspect's collar when Jolly appears suddenly, and tells them that the smell is of a perfume made from the blend of Osmond Rose and Prelude Rose, as well as that the ribbon around its neck is of expensive material. While talking, he also reveals that he has a deal with the 18th card, which is known as the Moon and Leaves. After spending the entire day chasing the kitten around the mansion and still unsure of its owner, Felicita, Liberta, and Nova decide to ask for help. Then they head over to Pace, hoping he might know something useful. Pace, who is always cheerful and helpful, listens to their story and then suggests they talk to DeBito instead, as he might have more specific information. After that, they quickly find DeBito and explain the situation. DeBito smirks and says he doesn't know the exact owner, but mentions that he recognizes the scent the kitten carries and that it is a very distinct perfume. He says he knows about 15 different perfumers who use that scent, so it could belong to any one of them. As they're trying to figure out their next step, Felicita's Arcana power suddenly activates again without warning, and she sees into the kitten's heart and catches a vision of its owner, who is a woman with blonde hair. This revelation helps narrow things down. Then, DeBito thinks for a moment and nods while saying that information eliminates about half of the potential owners, leaving only 8 possibilities. Then he picks up the kitten gently and examines the ribbon tied around its neck, noting the expensive material and fine craftsmanship. Suddenly, DeBito's mind finally clicks, and he identifies the owner without a doubt. That day, the group returns the kitten to its rightful owner, known as Lady Federica, who is a graceful woman with blonde hair dressed elegantly. She's overjoyed to have her beloved pet back safe and sound. As a token of gratitude, she gives Felicita a beautiful dress, which Felicita humbly accepts, thanking her with a warm smile. As they walk back toward the mansion, the sun starts to set, casting a golden glow over the path. Then Nova breaks the silence, speaking seriously that most people don't want others to see what's in their hearts because it's something private. But for Felicita to win the Arcana Duelo and reach her full potential, she needs to learn how to use her Arcana power by choice, not just when it activates on its own. Then Liberta smiles and agrees with Nova. He turns to Felicita and encourages her, telling her she has what it takes and she shouldn't be afraid of her power. In return, Felicita smiles back and tells Liberta that he too must find the truth about his own powers. Furthermore, reminds him to keep searching, and when he finally discovers it, he should be the one to shape it in his own way by using his own words and beliefs. Together, they continue walking, the bond between them growing stronger with each step, filled with hope, trust, and a renewed sense of purpose. Later that night, we see a maid named Isabella who is checking if all the doors in the mansion are closed. She suddenly hears footsteps behind a door, and she opens the door to see a ghost. The next day, we see Felicita and Liberta telling Nova that Isabella had seen a ghost yesterday, but he dismisses it, saying that she was probably hallucinating. Then, Liberta accuses Nova of not checking for the ghost because he is scared. Later that night, Felicita, Liberta, and Nova hide together in one of the dark hallways of the mansion, determined to finally uncover the truth behind the so-called ghost haunting the place. Everyone is tense, barely making a sound, hoping to catch the ghost in the act. Then Felicita slowly steps closer to Liberta, trying not to make a noise, but in the quiet darkness, Liberta suddenly notices her presence beside him and startled glances her way. In that awkward moment, his eyes fall to her chest, and he lets out a weird, nervous scream, completely caught off guard. Felicita gets startled by his reaction and quickly asks what's wrong, but Liberta, flustered and embarrassed, stammers that it's nothing. In his panicked state, he waves his hands and accidentally grabs her chest. Then Felicita blushes with surprise and frustration and punches Liberta in retaliation, sending him flying backward. He crashes through a door and tumbles into another room just as the others rush in after him, and they all suddenly freeze. Right in front of them is the ghost Isabella had been talking about, which is a floating figure with an eerie glow. A few moments later, Luca appears and reveals the truth behind the ghost. He casually explains that he created the ghost using alchemy, specifically designed as a pace repellent. Everyone is stunned, including Felicita, who asks why he would go through the trouble of making something so elaborate. Luca sighs and recounts an incident from the previous year. He tells that he has been preparing sweets for the children as part of the Piccolino celebration, which is a special day when the family members organize fun activities, games, and laughter for the local kids. However, while he was carefully crafting the treats last year, Pace had wandered into the kitchen in his sleep and eaten every single sweet, completely unaware of what he'd done. Frustrated by the memory, Luca explains that this year he wanted to ensure that wouldn't happen again, so he created the ghost to scare Pace away from the kitchen. Felicita listens closely and stays surprised as she hadn't known about the Piccolino event. Then, Luca smiles and gently tells her that it's a beautiful tradition the family holds every year where they spend time entertaining children, making them smile and showing them warmth. After that, Liberta chimes in and encourages Felicita to join in this year's celebration, saying it'll be fun. He also adds with a grin that Nova always finds an excuse to skip the event, though they try to get him involved anyway. The next day, as the town buzzes with excitement, a group of children run down the sidewalk, laughing and talking about Piccolino. As they rush forward, they bump into another young child who looks around in confusion and asks what Piccolino is. The others excitedly start explaining how amazing it is, how the Mansion family puts on shows and games just for them. On the day of Piccolino, the church is filled with laughter and energy. Then, Luca steps forward first to perform a magic trick for the children, hoping to impress them. He dramatically waves his hands and dramatically asks the children to see a dove appearing from his hat. But after doing the trick, Luca looks a bit discouraged as he doesn't get any reaction from the kids. Suddenly, Debito walks in while smirking. He walks over, gently nudges Luca aside, and declares that he's going to tell a scary story instead, which is something that will really grab the children's attention. The children sit up straighter, intrigued, while Luca crosses his arms and steps back, clearly annoyed, but also curious to see what Debito can do. The Piccolino celebration continues, full of surprises, laughter, and the special warmth that only this unique family can offer. The story that Debito tells begins to take a darker turn as the children gather closer, their eyes wide with anticipation. He speaks in a low, eerie voice about the legend of the scary moon demon Diavolo, who is said to dwell deep within Regalo Island. The tale goes that long ago, in the very church they're standing in now, Diavolo encountered a lonely orphan child who had been abandoned. Moved by the child's sadness, or perhaps enticed by his vulnerability, Diavolo split the child's soul in two. One half of the soul transformed into a dark entity known as Beelzebub, who wandered the island, while the other half remained trapped within the church and is still searching endlessly for someone to play with. The children listen with a mix of fear and excitement, huddling closer to each other, some holding hands and even crying. After the ghost story ends, the mood lightens a bit. Pace and Liberta can be seen happily munching on Luca's carefully prepared sweets alongside the children. Everyone seems to be enjoying themselves until suddenly, Debito stands up and slowly walks towards Felicita, and he leans close and begins sniffing her hair. The moment is awkward and confusing until Luca notices and instantly intervenes, demanding to know what Debito is doing. Then Debito simply says that he was just greeting her, brushing off Luca's irritation. But that doesn't stop the two from exchanging heated words, and the kids watch with amusement as the two men argue like old rivals. Meanwhile, the mysterious boy standing in a distant corner of the church watches Felicita silently, and his expression unreadable. Soon after, the mood shifts again as the group heads outside to play football. The kids laugh and cheer while running around the grassy field. Pace, full of energy, takes a strong kick at the ball, aiming for the goal, but instead it flies straight into Luca's face, knocking him back with a thud. Meanwhile, back at the mansion, Nova sits quietly in his room, isolated from the festivities. Suddenly, Mama enters the room looking stern and slightly disappointed. Then she scolds Nova gently for avoiding Piccolino yet again, reminding him how important it is to connect with others, especially the children. After that, Nova sighs and admits that he simply doesn't know how to act around kids, and he finds it awkward and doesn't want to say the wrong thing. Then, Mama softens, walking over and placing a comforting hand on his shoulder. She reminds him that kindness doesn't always need the right words, and sometimes just being there is enough. Later that evening, the skies open and rain begins to pour heavily across the island. Worried about the little ones, Debito, Luca, and Pace volunteer to take some of the children home safely. Meanwhile, Felicita and Liberta stay behind at the church to look after the remaining kids until everyone returns. During this time, Mama finds Nova again and gently convinces him to go help Felicita and Liberta at the church, saying that the others could use an extra hand, and that he's more capable than he gives himself credit for. While they wait, Liberta tries to entertain the kids by telling them a story from his own life. He begins with excitement, talking about the time he rescued Dante during a fierce storm. But midway through, his emotions start to rise, and he says that he has forgotten what happened next. Suddenly, the door swings open and Dante, Luca, and Pace return as they lead the last group of children inside. With all the children accounted for, Felicita and Liberta decide to check the entire church one last time to make sure no one has been left behind. After searching every hallway, room, and corner, they find nothing and finally head toward the exit. As they are about to step outside into the misty night air, Nova arrives, slightly out of breath from hurrying over. Then, Liberta assures him that everything's fine and all the children have been safely taken home. But Nova listens, then looks past them with narrowed eyes, and his expression shifts slightly as he quietly asks who was that boy standing behind them. Felicita and Liberta freeze and slowly turn around as they see the mysterious boy standing just a few feet away, watching them silently with an unreadable gaze. He tells his name to be Elmo and asks Felicita about the thumping feeling in his heart when he looks at her, and tells her that it is his first time feeling this feeling like Pokemon trainer finally seeing Pikachu's heart meter go off. Then Liberta checks for fever, but the child isn't sick, so they assume he has a cold, and Liberta goes to the basement to get a blanket for him. On coming back, he sees that Elmo has disappeared. As Felicita asks where he was, he answers from behind, telling them that he is going home. Nova tries to go with him because the rain was too dangerous, but as soon as he walked out the door, Elmo had disappeared. Then Liberta jokes that he was the remaining half from Debito's story. Later that night, we hear someone coming into Jolly's room, and Jolly greets the person by saying welcome home. Up 4. Later, we see a flashback of thoughts where Liberta and Dante are sailing towards Regalo Island. Then we see Liberta and Dante in the present time catching fish at the pier when Liberta gets called by Felicita. She tells him that Mama wanted them to deliver something to Miss Giovanna, who is her old friend, and she adds that Nova couldn't come help them as he was busy, so he drew them a map instead. As following the map was very difficult, Liberta took her to the roof of the buildings as a shortcut, and then they started following the map from there with Liberta in front when he starts thinking about his past and falls down with Felicita in a shop on the street like Ratchet and Clank rooftop leap gone wrong. Then Felicita tries to reassure everyone that everything's fine, but the shopkeeper cuts her off, saying that it's definitely not fine and puts them to work immediately. Then they spend the whole evening asking people to buy from their shop. Liberta is worried about delivering the scarf to Miss Giovanna when she suddenly shows up behind him and asks to buy flowers from the shop. Suddenly, Liberta recognizes her and gives her the scarf. Then, Liberta mentions to Felicita that whenever she is around, everything falls into place, and this might be an effect of her powers. Later, the shopkeeper comes and thanks them for their work, which ended up doubling his profit and allows them to take any one item from his shop for free as a token of appreciation. After that, Liberta looks at the masks and tells Felicita that when he was young, living in an orphanage, a man wearing a mask saved him. At this moment, Liberta finds the same mask worn by his savior, at which the shopkeeper commented that it is a rare mask and said to be worn by a man who saved many children from an orphanage which did terrible things to them. After that, he goes to Dante and shows him the mask. Dante doesn't comment and scolds Liberta for falling off the building and putting the princess's life in danger as reported by Nova. Liberta blames Nova's map but is shut down by Dante. Then he angrily runs outside the room, and before following him, Felicita peeks inside Dante's heart and sees Liberta surrounded by a falling building in flames. Later, Jolly realizes and tells Dante that Felicita peeked into his heart. The next day, Felicita walks in and sees Liberta training, and when she asks if it's because of what Dante said, he shakes his head and explains that he is training because he made a vow to live by his sword. Later, Felicita grows curious about Liberta's mysterious past and wonders if Nova knows anything about it. She approaches him and asks if he's aware of any details regarding Liberta's connection with Dante or what might have happened to him in the past. After that, Nova shakes his head and replies that he doesn't know much. Though she doesn't press further, Felicita's curiosity only deepens. That evening, Felicita is unable to shake the feeling that something important is being hidden, and so she decides to take matters into her own hands and writes a letter to Dante, asking to speak with him privately, and sends it with her trusted pet owl, Fuculota. Later that night, Dante receives the letter and meets Felicita as requested. As they talk to each other, Felicita looks at him seriously and asks if he was the one who saved Liberta from the orphanage years ago. Then Dante pauses for a moment and then replies positively. Suddenly, a fire breaks out, casting a bright glow into the night. The flames crackle and rise, and Felicita and Dante rush toward the scene, where they find Liberta standing in front of the fire, staring at it with a blank, almost haunted expression. As they watch, Dante begins to explain. He tells Felicita that he met Liberta 10 years ago in a faraway place known as the Nord Country. At the time, Liberta was just a young boy, living in a grim and cruel orphanage where the caretakers performed twisted experiments on the children, and among all the kids, Liberta was treated the worst because of the strange power he possessed, which was a power that made anything he said become real. Furthermore, he tells Felicita that Liberta was abused and mistreated at the church. Dante goes on to say that this is how he brought Liberta back to the island of Regalo and took him under his wing. Back at the scene of the fire, Liberta's gaze remains fixed on the flames. Slowly, memories start flooding back and terrifying images of the past he had long forgotten appear in front of him, including the trauma he endured in that orphanage, the isolation, the pain, and the uncontrollable power he had no understanding of. As the memories overwhelm him, he unconsciously whispers the word burn, and suddenly, the flames instantly grow larger and wilder. Seeing the intensity of her worry, Dante further reveals that after rescuing Liberta, it became clear that his powers were too dangerous for a child who couldn't control them. So, with the permission of Mondo, they sealed Liberta's powers and erased the painful memories of his past to protect him from further emotional harm. But now, with those memories resurfacing, so are the abilities they tried so hard to suppress. Dante looks at Felicita with a heavy heart and admits that while they meant to protect him, they may have also delayed his growth. The same night, Liberta asks Felicita if she could read his heart and see the blurry pieces of his memory, but she declines. Then he runs angrily to Dante and asks him if he was the masked man, after which Dante reveals the truth to him. Then he runs off angrily from there and falls. As he turns around, he's met by Nova, who tells him to get stronger and to win the tournament for Felicita's sake. The next morning, Luca and Felicita present the limon pie, a dish known as Regalo's treasure, to Nova, Liberta, Debito, Pace, and Dante. While eating, Felicita sits across Liberta, and he walks away to the fountain like Sasuke brooding by a waterfall when he is approached by Nova, who tells him that he can't handle his past, while Jolly watches them talk from a distance. Later that day, the warm afternoon sun bathes the mansion in a gentle glow as Felicita walks down the hallway, carefully holding a tray full of freshly made limon pies. She's excited to share them with Mama and the others as a simple gesture from the heart. Suddenly, Nova spots her balancing the tray and casually offers to help. He comments that if she were to trip, the pies would be completely ruined, and that would be a tragedy for everyone waiting to enjoy them. Then Felicita smiles but lets him carry the tray, quietly appreciating his concern. Soon, the two arrive in the sitting room where Mama is waiting. The three of them sit together at a round table, the room filled with the comforting aroma of lemon and pastry. As they eat, laughter and light conversation fill the space, creating a sense of warmth and ease. The cheerful atmosphere sparks a nostalgic memory for Mama, who begins to talk about the past. Then she recalls the very first day Nova came to live in their home as a shy, quiet boy who had just arrived. On that day, little Felicita had been so excited to welcome him that she tried baking a cake just for him, and it was far from perfect, but she had made it with all her love and effort. Everyone at the table laughs as they remember how messy and sweet the moment was. As the conversation continues, Mama lovingly teases Nova, saying that even back then, she already thought of him as Felicita's future husband. Her tone is playful, but her affection is genuine, and the moment is filled with warmth and tenderness. Then Nova speaks with his soft but sincere voice, saying that day was the first time he ever felt what it was like to be part of a real family, and that was a feeling he had never experienced before. Felicita looks at him gently, and Mama smiles warmly, understanding the depth of what Nova has just shared. The scene closes on the three of them sitting together, not just sharing a pie, but also memories, feelings, and a growing sense of connection, which is a quiet reminder of the bond they've built through kindness, acceptance, and time. While heading back to their rooms, they take some flowers from Mama, and Nova tells her about his love for Japan like Luffy's love for meat. He asks Felicita if she has fertilizers for her flower, to which she replies no, and Nova offers to show her a great fertilizer shop after patrolling the next day. The next day, we see a lady complain to the casino's security that her purse has been stolen. While walking, Felicita tells Nova that she hasn't been able to stabilize her powers yet when she bumps into a man. Her powers activate, and she looks into his heart and sees him stealing a purse. Then, they both chase him to an alley where they get surrounded by his friends. Nova and Felicita defeat them and return the purse to the lady. While returning back home, Nova hands her a bag of fertilizer, saying he got one of his men to bring it for her. Then she tells Nova that Mama seems to be the closest with him and might be expecting a lot from him, but Nova stops and tells her that everybody expects a lot from her, and he thinks that Mondo is holding the duelo so that she can become more powerful. Later in his room, Nova gets information that the lab is using more funds than usual. At the same time, Felicita confesses to Luca that Nova is pushing her away. Then, Luca comes into Nova's room and sets up a meeting with Felicita without telling either of them. Suddenly, Felicita comes in, and it is told that Nova voided his engagement with Felicita. She comes in with chickpea soup and gives it to Nova while Luca tells him to finish the meal and heads out. Nova finishes and praises the soup, and asks her to break into the lab and find out the reason for the excessive use of funding. She agrees, and when she reaches the lab, the key doesn't work. Suddenly, Jolly sees and invites her into the lab, where she takes some documents and presents them to Nova, among which he finds the medical report of his parents, who have been sleeping for 7 years because he used his death power on them, as he tells Felicita, which makes her cry.